Hey everybody, we are here with Bryn Frere-Smith, founder of Blueberry Coffee, which main goal is to fund the eradication of human trafficking. He's also the host of the Justice and Coffee podcast and the head of security of the Justice and Care NGO in London. Welcome to the show, Bryn.
Thank you very much. So good to be here virtually.
Yes, thank you. Well, let's just start off. I'd love to kind of hear more about your coffee company.
My coffee company, well, I like to describe it as an anti-trafficking agency that sells coffee. So for me, it's important we get that the right way around. We were founded purely with the principle of developing a sustainable way of fighting this issue of human trafficking through a business. And we chose to do it through coffee. I love coffee. I've always been a coffee fan. Coffee for me is a romantic and nuanced and diverse product to engage with, and we get a chance as well to have an involvement with amazing countries all over the world that are producing it, and we can eradicate slavery by paying them the right money and having some transparency in our supply chains. But also, I mean, actually, the more people I speak to, I found out who don't drink coffee. It's amazing, but typically it's a very universal and ubiquitous product. There are students that drink coffee, there are CEOs that drink coffee, so it's a way of engaging people with this message, what we're trying to do. So I didn't want to start a charity because I don't feel I'm in any way capable of doing something so complex and impressive. But for whatever reason, I thought I might just be able to start a business to affect this issue. So we started a coffee company.
Wow. So how old are you guys? I think I saw you just celebrated your 2-year anniversary.
Yes, well observed. Yes, actually, it's on the 27th of September will be our 2-year anniversary, and we're holding a fundraiser this month until Anti-Slavery Day on the 16th of October. We're asking people to go and sell products online, well, sell items online they don't need anymore, clothing, or I don't know, I'm putting an old drum kit on the internet and to try and raise some money. So being a new company, we're not really made any money, and we exist to support these causes, but I don't want to leave it at that. So we're going to try and do fundraisers each year. We'll probably continue to do them even when we are in profit. So this year we're going to try and raise money through selling things online that we don't need anymore in a very sort of COVID generation theme.
Awesome. Well, I'd love to hear how you came about to start this, just the story that inspired you to do this.
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely. So I'll try and avoid wherever possible waffling on and including far too much of my life that is necessary, but I would probably start a few years ago in the Dominican Republic. So I'm an ex-police officer. I was a police officer in the UK for 5 years, and I left, not for any particularly scandalous reasons, you'll be pleased to hear, and I ended up in the private security world. So I worked as a bodyguard in something called close protection for a variety of high-profile individuals for about 5 years. I just got to a point where I thought, this is interesting and exciting, but I'm not sure it's really achieving sort of the purpose, what I feel my life is attached to about this issue of justice and of protecting people, but more inclined to protect people that have no one else to protect them. And I thought, wow, what can I do about this? So I left my job and I volunteered for an organization called International Justice Mission, who, if you hadn't already heard of them, are an amazing NGO, probably the largest anti-slavery agency in the world, headquartered in Washington, DC. And I was applying to help them out as a fellow, and I was going to be sent to either India or the Dominican Republic, and I happened to have left my Spanish GCSE. I don't know what the equivalent of that qualification is in the US. It's not particularly impressive, but I left it on my CV, and that was what swung it from Bangalore to the Caribbean. So I was very grateful for that. And so I spent a year in the Caribbean, and it was beautiful, but it was also very, very complex. It's a very poor country, the Dominican Republic. I think most of us probably think of it as being a holiday resort because it has these incredible 5-star hotels with amazing white sandy beaches and blue seas, but it also has a huge percentage of human trafficking. And the project that I was attached to was a project that was investigating the commercial sexual exploitation of children. So what that means in effect is there is a very high percentage of sex workers in the Dominican Republic. Prostitution is legal. In fact, it's a really thriving industry. It's not just for tourists either. And IJM, when they launched their project there, they carried out a baseline study, and they believed that around 10% of the sex workers were under 18. They're in fact minors. And our project was to identify minors in the sex industry that had been trafficked, who were being forced, deceived, or coerced into that position. And I don't believe any child that is for sale has done so willingly. So that's what we were looking for. And my role, obviously, being white, ginger, and English, wasn't going to be a surveillance officer like what I did in the police. My role was to be an undercover investigator performing the role of a European tourist looking for girls in an attempt to identify children in the sex industry, so we could sort of spring an investigation around what we found. And it was definitely the hardest 12 months of my life. As you can probably imagine, we went to some really dark places and met a lot of people in need, and their situations were grave and heartbreaking. But there was one in particular that stuck with me, and it was around Christmas time. And we got called up from a police officer on the north of the island that said, hey, we've got a case here that there's a child, she's come forward, she's spoken to a school teacher for the first time. And she's explained that at home she's being abused, and she's got a long history of abuse. But worse still, her mother has now started to take money for her abuse, to charge money to men who are coming around to abuse this little girl. And she'd never spoken about it, but this little girl had a little brother and sister, and she wanted to protect them, and she could see the direction of their lives. So she spoke up. We were involved in that police response, and the girl and her younger siblings were removed from that situation. My colleague took them to the safe house, and when she did, the little girl said, oh, before we leave, can I get something from home? And she asked for her blue teddy bear. And it broke my heart. It was the only item of value that she had. It wasn't an iPad or a MacBook or a piece of jewelry. It was this ragdoll teddy bear. And it certainly didn't resemble the sort of teddies we think of when you think of teddies. It was barely held together. And it probably came from an abuser. And it was just, for me, a real grave moment of sadness. And ironically, 12 months before, it was Christmas time, and I was performing that previous role as a bodyguard, looking after a Persian prince, walking around Harrods, which is our version of like Macy's in New York, this very, very posh department store, walking around the Toy Kingdom. It was like the third time I'd been there that week, and the child had now learned that he didn't actually need to waste any time selecting toys from the shelves. He could just push them off because they'd be swept up, put in a basket, and sent to the hotel. Fast forward 12 months, I'm with this child, and that's the only thing she's got of any value in the world. And I need to respond to this. So my initial response was to raise some money. And it was Christmas. I went back, spoke to some friends and family, couldn't make a big deal out of it, couldn't go online because of the nature of my job. But between us, we raised a couple of £1,000. And I got to go back. And the next 6 months that I was on this project, I got to work with the aftercare department of this project, which I loved, because as an investigator, you don't get to be the compassionate one that throws your arms around someone and says, actually, you're loved and you matter. You want to, but that's not your job. That's somebody else's job. So I got to do it by proxy, by supporting the aftercare team and their needs. So they would say, well, we've got these kids who are in real need of medication. We need to try and help them. Well, we can do that. We've got these children that they're in our aftercare support and they want to go back to school, but they've got no educational materials or clothing. Well, we can fix that. And it was in effect a slush fund. It's not a sustainable way of doing charity. But for me, it was the best part of my experience was meeting immediate need. And it started by buying a load of teddy bears. Some nice, white, clean teddy bears that are still being handed out now in the Dominican Republic. And at the end of the year, I was sort of faced with some thoughts. Do I go back to the world of close protection? Do I stay on in this capacity in some way? But what I really wanted to do was keep this giving going. And I thought, what if I can create something that can outgive what I personally could give? And it didn't mean me just asking people for money. What if we could create a business that could sustainably produce financial support for the likes of this organization and many of the other brilliant organizations doing the hard work around the world? So that was the birth idea, concept of Blue Bear coffee after the Blue Bear experience I had with this child that Christmas. And so that's where it came from, and that's what we exist to do.
Well, before we go, I would really love to hear if there's anything you'd like to share with our audience, something that may be on your heart about this, or any extra things people can do to help stop human trafficking.
Oh gosh, yes, that's a real question. I mean, I always want to encourage people to not stop and when they learn about an issue, and it might be through something they see on the internet, or they've just watched Taken for the first time, or something that brings this subject of modern day slavery and human trafficking to mind. I think typically we all know it's awful, but I would always try and encourage people not to stop there, to have a very, very general knowledge about something and know it's bad and move on. And I think we've all got to challenge ourselves to move from being a viewer to a doer, if you excuse the cheesiness of that phrase. But I really think we are all called into action, and that action doesn't have to be, as an ex-investigator, for a very rare occasion, I can actually do something with my own professional experience. In most cases, that doesn't happen. We don't have to be investigators or doctors or counsellors, but wherever we live and wherever we work, there's probably a means of us bringing some support to these issues. So I really believe in finding existing charities. We don't all have to create something. We can find amazing delivery partners that are doing a good job, find out what they need. Is it financial resources? Well, of course it is always that. But what if you could go and volunteer and support them? What if you could support them in some way? If you could bring some sense of encouragement to these organizations, which will all, I would very, very confidently imagine, be very grateful for your support. So that's what I would love to encourage anybody that has just a sense that they want to engage with this issue, to leave some sort of legacy in their life about battling the injustice of human trafficking and modern slavery. Find a partner, find a delivery partner, find an NGO in your area, or someone that steps out. You see it on social media. Get in contact with them. How can I help? It might be sharing the issue on your social media. It might be doing a fundraiser yourself. But most organizations would be extremely grateful for your support. So that's what I would love to leave as a message.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on our show, Bryn, and everybody go out and get his coffee. And if you are a coffee producer and you want to partner with him in the US or other countries, then reach out.
That would be great. Hey, it's been an absolute pleasure, Leah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.